Hello, I'm Emma, and we just finished our climate unit in philosophy class, and I'll be going over some of the main arguments we discussed during class. We focus on both sides of the climate change, including the consensus view and the minority view. The consensus view is favored by a vast majority of scientists and often cited as around 97% of them agree. We will discuss the information behind that statistic in one of these arguments. The consensus view of climate change sees human activity as the primary cause of global warming and other factors the world experiences. On the other hand, the minority view on climate change is that it is real and is definitely happening, but it has happened before and it's not caused all by human activity. The first argument we'll be going over is the 97 consensus theory. To head back into the previous statistic that 97% of scientists agree with the consensus view. The consensus makes this claim, but it doesn't always add up once you dive a little deeper into some of the questions they asked in this survey. A survey of scientists was taken by Zimmerman and Doran in 2009, and in 2013, John Cook reviewed 11,944 environmental research papers that were published in academic journals. He came back after reviewing and reported that 97% of these papers sided with the consensus view on climate change. The consensus view believes a majority opinion should not be dismissed, and even if it is not this exact 97% like the minority is challenging, they still have a majority and that's all that matters. They also strongly support the idea that a majority of scientists agree that the climate change is very serious and cannot be ignored due to the fact that we're the ones causing the rise in temperatures. In summary, the consensus view is made up of highly educated scientists who agree humans are the leading factor of rising temperatures, so why should anyone not agree with that? And the minority view are those that dug deeper into the statistic of this survey, because they knew something was not adding up. First of all, the survey only asked two broad questions, those being 1, when compared with the pre-1800 levels, do you think that mean global temperatures have generally risen, fallen, or remained constant? And 2, do you think human activity is a significant contributing factor in changing mean global temperatures? This survey only focused on those who consider themselves climate experts. Another main factor is the government funds only the consensus view, which is why the majority of high-paid climate scientists take that side. The minority view highlights some ideas to take into account before believing this 97% consensus theory. Ask yourself, isn't it odd that only 77 of these respondents were focused on when there were 3,146 in total? Those who are on the minority view and strongly agree could still be confidently answering yes to these questions they were asked. That's how broad they were. In conclusion, the minority believes that scientific ideas like climate change should be based on hard evidence that is gathered from studies, research, and tests. The consensus view cherry-picked the data to the extreme, making it look like all of their ideas are correct, but the data is fudged. And after a study was done on the papers John Cook reviewed, it looked as if only 1.6% of these papers really sided with the consensus view. And this is 97% agree or not. The next argument is the wildfires. The consensus view claims the increase in wildfires in the United States is due to the global temperatures rising, which they claim is caused by humans. In class discussion, while talking about the consensus, we saw graphic pictures of fires that ripped apart parts of our world. These include the California wildfire, which burned 18,000 kilometers, the Russia wildfires, which burned 200,000 kilometers, and the Australian bushfire, which burned 338,000 kilometers and killed 34. They then claim the amount of acres burned each year has gone from under 2 million in the early 80s to now 10 million, which is a 5-fold increase. Climate change has also doubled the frequency of autumn days, with extreme fire conditions in California happening frequently. The consensus view claims wildfires across the U.S. are becoming more and more frequent. And this is the wildfire view that the consensus put out. And then a major takeaway I've learned during discussion in class in our work with graphs is all about the starting place in these graphs I just showed. Where a view starts their graph says a lot about what they want to show and what they want to hide. I have noticed the minority view tends to start their graphs a little bit earlier in the time period, which makes sense because they claim a lot of what is happening with the climate and its factors has happened on Earth before and just in an earlier time period, which they show in the graphs. We can see the graph's starting point is a huge factor for the theme of the graph when we take the U.S. wildfire graph from the different views and put the consensus graph on top of the minority graph. So this is the consensus. Putting the minority view graph underneath the consensus view graph, this is kind of where they line up in years, and this is proving the minority when they're saying that this increase is not much to worry about when we've had this increase in the past. In my opinion, one of the most intriguing and important ideas from the unit we just finished up was the hockey stick graph and the information that we learned along the way. The hockey stick graph is a graph done by Michael Mann, which shows the northern hemisphere temperature variations over many years. The different lines on the graph are representing other people and organizations who double-checked the data sets after Mann put their observations on the graph as well. And this is that hockey stick graph, and these are those lines that other people, like these organizations and these people, they also double-checked this data and then they put theirs on top, but it almost matches perfectly. So the consensus view. Bennett was one who sided with the consensus view and claimed the original hockey stick done by Michael Mann was built using only one data set. Those on the minority view immediately jumped onto this graph, questioning how true it was, and to shut this down, many more scientists and organizations that also supported the consensus view gathered their own data and placed their information on the graph as well, lining up almost perfectly with what Michael Mann had already presented. Soon after, an NRC report came out stating the graph and the data within it was fully valid and should worry us. Additional research from the consensus further strengthened their claim and the logic behind the hockey stick visual. The medieval warm period is not global, in the opinion of those on the consensus, so this means the hockey stick graph shows no evidence of a medieval warm period. In conclusion, the consensus entirely believes and supports this graph created by Mann, which shows a spike in global temperatures, where this is that spike, and that's where it gets the hockey stick graph, or the hockey stick name, where that's the tip of the hockey stick and this is the rest. And we need to take this seriously. The medieval warm period was regional, minor, and has no place on the hockey stick graph. The minority view has many opinions and a lot to say when it comes to this said graph, and this is where I felt I grasped a true opinion on what I thought about which side I saw more clearly. Yes, Michael Mann's graph had some relevant information, and again, the minority isn't completely disagreeing with the consensus view, but instead, they see some cherry picking of the data and are not afraid to call that out, even if it may cost some of them their job. And yes, the graph was replicated and double-checked, but it was done by those in the Michael Mann clique, meaning those he worked with and those who would not go against him. Michael Mann and others on the consensus view stonewalled the information that was put into the graph, and if they were confident in their data and the graph itself, what was the point of stonewalling? It makes me wonder what they were hiding and what they could cover up in the time they stalled. These ideas lead into the ClimateGate emails, which were also very fishy. Many emails between those within the consensus view were leaked to the public and looked as if they were trying to hide a lot of the things, like hide the decline and we need to make the medieval warm period disappear. A lot of these factors go into why this specific argument is where I could side with the minority. The consensus seems to be fudging and cherry-picking a lot of their data when it comes to the hockey stick graph and the ClimateGate emails. Thank you.